Hey Herb, nice to meet you in person almost. Are you still on mute?
Yep, nice to meet all of you, although your faces are becoming more familiar with every time I work here every day.
Like it or not.
It's like, yeah, just good days and not so good days.
Crazy days.
Yeah.
So Herb, I saw an email come in just a little while ago from Lynn saying she was running a little bit late.
Yep.
Did you hear from Bob? I don't see Bob on here.
No, Lynn is, and then Lisa had to leave a little bit early, so
Right.
just those two.
Okay. And I saw Sherry on here earlier, but oh, there she is. Hey, Sherry. Okay, great. So we are missing Nathan, Greg, and Bob, and Mark. And Lynn, obviously, but we know Lynn will be a little bit late. I want to get started because we do have a lot to cover, and I do hope the rest of them join. Because this meeting is being recorded, I'm going to introduce myself again. I'm Emily Slotnick with the Beta Group. I'm the project manager for the Town of Coventry's comprehensive plan update. We are here for our second committee meeting, and I'm just going to ask each of the committee members who are present to introduce themselves. I'm going to call you out based on how you appear on my screen. So Lisa, can we start with you?
Sure. I'm Lisa Nakowitz. I am the treasurer of the Lake Tioga Association and the coordinator for Watershed Watch on Lake Tioga.
Thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Lisa.
No, that's fine.
Okay, great. Tom?
Good afternoon, Tom Pendergast. I live at 6 White Rock Road, vice president of the Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association and concerned citizen, been in Coventry since 2017. Looking forward to this.
Thanks. Sherry?
Did you say Larry?
I said Sherry, but
Sherry. Oh,
there she is.
sorry.
I think it worked. Hi, I'm Sherry Eldukin. I am a Coventry resident. I live in Weston, Coventry, and I am also on the planning board.
Great, thank you. Julie?
Julie Letty, Coventry resident since 1987 and the executive director of Coventry Housing Authority.
Thank you. Anne?
Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Dixon. I'm president of the Coventry Town Council. When I spoke to Russell about being appointed to this group, I asked to be appointed not as a member of the town council, but as a resident. Just to
Thank
let you
you.
know.
Great. Herb, you're showing up next. So I know you fall into a different category, but I'm just going to have you introduce yourself now.
Right. Herb Durfee, Director of Planning and Development. Been here for a couple months now. Feels like it's been about 3 to 5 years. But looking forward to working with all of you to see comp plan get past the finish line this time.
Thank you. Larry, you can go ahead.
Larry Manier, 170 Richardson Road, and I volunteer my GIS skills to the town. That's it.
All right, thank you. And we had someone else just join from a phone number ending in 1886.
So you can do the *9 to undo yourself.
*9 to unmute.
There
if
you go.
would.
Now you can go.
I've got a hand raised there.
Oh.
Maybe I can unmute them. Oh, doesn't look like I have that control. Do you have that control, Herb?
I'm co-hosting, so I'm trying to, I can't, you used to be able to do it. You can't do it anymore. So all I can do is ask unmute. So whomever's on the phone, if you can hit *9, you actually raised your hand, which I think is I want to say *6,
Oh,
but
there we go.
there.
You are
Okay,
unmuted.
I follow in. This is Bob Heavey. Sorry, I dialed in a few minutes late.
No worries. Thanks for joining us, Bob. We're just going through introductions because this meeting is being recorded. So we just wanted to let everyone know who's on the call. All right. And we do expect Len Carlson. Hopefully we get the other committee members on as well. I did want to say that I received an email from Ken Goodwin last week, the end of last week, essentially stepping down from the committee, saying he wasn't able to commit the time to the project, and he apologized to the group and to us and to the town. So I'm sharing that with the committee now, both just so you know why he's not here and won't be at future committee meetings, but also in case there is a motion or a thought that we want to replace Ken. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what district Ken represented. I know we had some overlap in our district where we have multiple representatives on the committee. I don't know if Ken is in one of those, but I think that if he is one of the committee members that is a solo representative for his district, then it maybe is more important that we find someone to take his seat from that district. Does anyone know District 3? Okay, I think that's where we had plenty of overlap. Yeah. All right, good. Moving on the agenda today, do you all receive a copy of the agenda in my previous email? Maybe just for the purposes of this recording, I will do a quick screen share of that agenda. Let's see. If I do. Herb, could you please give me permission to share my screen?
Maybe. Try that.
Great. All right. Are we all seeing the meeting agenda here?
Yes.
Thank you. So we went through our reintroductions. We're gonna just review the project timeline. Got a couple of housekeeping items. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at the previously proposed actions for the last comprehensive plan that was adopted in Coventry. And then we will engage in a visioning discussion before wrapping up, talking about what our next steps are with the next committee meeting. Any questions or concerns about the agenda today? Okay, great. So I'm going to stop my screen share. Actually, you know what? I'll just keep it up to walk through the project timeline here. So I've sort of blurred out or grayed out the meetings that will have passed by the, well, that have already passed. So we've already had our first committee meeting in March. We've already had our first public meeting in May. And here we are in July for a second committee meeting. We'll have another 4 committee meetings after this one. We will have another 2 public meetings as well. And the next public meeting will be in mid-October. It's currently scheduled for October the 12th. Barring any major conflicts that are unforeseen at this point, we'll keep that date. That will be a virtual meeting, as will be the following committee meeting. The second committee meeting, the public meeting. In fact, all meetings are scheduled to be virtual at this point, but it was the second public meeting that I was suggesting is happening on October the 12th. And the subject of that meeting will be to review the findings of the existing conditions, needs and opportunities evaluation, and presenting the draft vision and goals for discussion, and then brainstorming on strategies.
Emily, can I interrupt for a second on that?
Please do,
Because
Herb.
you probably haven't had a chance to catch up with the, I'm drawing a blank, Maureen or more, I can't remember her name, but with Fuss and O'Neill.
We've emailed, yeah.
Okay, with the facilities there, when they're doing one of their public meetings, it's literally like within days of October 12.
Oh, really?
So it may be beneficial to chat about that, because maybe you could do some joint stuff where maybe we can focus on some facilities and utilities or something for that meeting. But I just want to make sure we don't have sort of like back-to-back public hearings that same week.
Thanks for that. I am scheduled right now to meet with Laura from Fuss and O'Neill this Friday.
Okay,
So
great.
I'll make sure to talk about that date. Thank you for
Yeah.
mentioning that.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Very good. So without any questions or concerns about this schedule, I guess I didn't read the bottom two lines here. We are currently shooting to submit a final draft plan for state and local review by the end of March 2023. To have a plan, what we presume we will have revisions back to us so that we can present the final plan to town council and planning board the following month. That is if the state stays exactly to their review time and maybe comes in a little bit more ahead of that. So actually, since we first wrote up the schedule, I think I have a better understanding of what amount of time the state is able to take for their review. So we might need to revisit that, but we'll know more because we are in fact submitting sections of the plan for state review in advance of that final submittal. So we'll have some experience with how that goes, and we'll be better prepared to speak with confidence about what that timeline will be next time we meet. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm going to talk about the status of where we are right now in our review of the existing conditions, needs, and opportunities chapters. That's what I'm referring to. I've made a new acronym because we always, who's got enough acronyms in their lives? So the ECNO chapters, I'm calling them. We've sent out 4 of these chapters to the committee already. And these are chapters that are based on the comprehensive plan element chapters that are required of all comprehensive plans in the state of Rhode Island. We've received a handful of comments. Herb actually compiled those comments into a single comment form. I believe that was in my inbox just earlier this afternoon. I appreciate everyone who's put the time in thus far to review and provide comments on those draft chapters. It's extremely helpful and an extremely important part of our process. So we'll be working over the next week or two to incorporate those comments into final drafts that we will, as I was just saying, submit to statewide planning office for an interim review of those draft chapters. And that's going to be sort of our litmus test from the state to get their eyes on where we're at this sort of midway of the plan writing process, which is different from midway in the planning process, just to be clear about that. And get their thoughts. We're doing this deliberately, as we talked about in our first committee meeting, so that there aren't any surprises at the end of the day. We want this plan to be one that is reflective of the town's needs and priorities and goals and vision. Number one, that's the priority. Number two, we want to do our best to make sure that it is a plan that is aligned with the state goals and will be approved and adopted by the state. So that's why we're taking that route. You will see 3 more of those chapters this week. I warn you, one of them is hefty. It is the services and facilities chapter, which in a way is like 8 chapters in one. So I'll give everyone the same amount of time for review, but I understand if you need more time, I just ask that you let us know, either Herb or I, that you still intend to provide us with comments, but you need a couple more days, and that way it just holds us off on our process of taking those comments and starting to work them in. It's just better that we have all of them before we start doing that. So again, I'll give you the same 2 weeks, but if you need more time, just let us know. And so you'll see services and utilities, you'll see cultural and historic resources this week, and you'll also see energy this week. And that'll leave us in the next batch. You'll get economic development, You'll get hazard mitigation, not natural hazards and climate change. And you will get natural resources. So those will be the final three. And again, that'll be a hefty bunch, but not quite as big as this next batch. So other items for housekeeping. Well, actually, let me stop there. Any questions or concerns so far about the way we're going about either the way we're going about the review of these draft chapters or anything you've seen in the draft chapters? Obviously, I haven't seen those comments yet, or I haven't combed through them. So if it's something that I'll see in the comments, feel free to hold your comment until I read it, or if you'd like to bring it up here now, that's fine too.
Emily.
Got a
Tom
couple hands
here.
up. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
So maybe just some words from you and Herb on guidance. So I mostly read the ECNOs with a hat on around what was missing and where there were, misled or misphrased sentences and punctuation and spelling. And I didn't spend a lot of time on vision or goals. So is that the correct procedure at this point, is to just review the content for its basic structure and missing items?
Yes, the answer is yes. I'm going to explain the answer a little bit because you did mention missing content. And relative to vision and goals, missing content is probably the most important thing there. Obviously, we appreciate you catching anything that we've missed just editorially. We are reviewing all of these with 2 internal reviewers, but it's how it goes. Things get missed. So we appreciate those, but missing content is the most important thing because while the chapters you're seeing right now are, they're a snapshot. They are really supposed to be a picture in time of what we've got, what has come before, how we see things right now. And they need to have the information necessary to tee up the vision and the goals and the strategies and opportunities. So those are all the next steps. We want it to be a narrative that flows well. We are going to revise these chapters and condense them down so it's more of an introduction into those visions and goals. But it is still very important at this point that we're hitting all the key points of what exists and what is going to get us into the goals. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Anne, I saw you had a hand up as well.
Yes, I was not looking for spelling or grammar. I do that all day long with things that I receive. So I was looking more at content. Many of my concerns had to do with clarification. I didn't understand what certain phrases meant.
Sure.
And I felt that they were different for me, and I thought they would perhaps needed to be clarified for the average reader. I also don't have a clear sense of what it means to retain the rural character of Coventry. I mean, every time we have a council meeting, people say we have to retain the rural character of Coventry. People come and they complain because they don't want development in Western Coventry. And I think we need to clarify, and we need to dig deeper into what it means to have a balance between economic development, rural character, communities, villages, etc. And I'm not explaining it quite as well as I would like to. It's just that I didn't get a sense from reading what it is we're trying to do and how we can find a balance, and just how much land are we really interested in putting aside for rural rural character. What are we willing to put in? What is the recommendation going to be? So I would like to at some point talk about that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm glad you're bringing it up now because I think we can actually talk about that today, and we ought to talk about that today as part of the vision and brainstorming we'll do.
And I also saw a section of selection that perhaps developing Summit into a village concept. And I mean, I live just 1 mile from the Summit General Store. We have an old church that was historic. It's now been everything that was important in it has been taken out of it. So that's now privately owned. We have the Summit General Store. I don't see the village there. I don't see a concept of what a village is. And when we say develop it as a village, I'm not sure what that means. So I think we need to clarify some of the phrases that are being used and some of the goals, so it's completely understandable, not only to us, but to other people, what is meant.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me, Sherry has her hand up.
Yes, Sherry, go ahead.
So I think what people mean by rural character, Aaron, is that they want to keep the open land and the forest areas intact in Western Coventry. Every time there's anything going on in the western end of Coventry, there are always complaints when it relates to clearing of land, taking away the open space. This is a beautiful section of town that people like to travel through to look at the scenery, and to see that destroyed by building on it. I think that's where people want the rural protected, is in this end of town.
Well, I mean, I understand that, and I think that we have to talk about zoning regulations and permitting and for developments, et cetera. That's all very important. But I also see, you know, pieces of land where people do not want anything to go on that property. And I've got a lot of complaints from people who do not like what their neighbors are doing. If their neighbors are cutting a tree, they complain, because even though it's on their neighbor's property, they don't want that tree cut. So I just think, I mean, I don't think this is exactly the moment to discuss this, but I want to raise the issue about what does it mean, protect the rural character of a community, and what kinds of zoning regulations or ordinances are needed, and how far do we really want to go in this comprehensive plan?
Yeah, these all really good questions, and thank you, Sherry, for your thoughts on it as well. And again, I think I'd like to get back to this later on today in the discussion when we talk about the vision. Any other thoughts on the review process right now?
No, I don't have any personally, but I just needed to make that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one thing, Emily, because I know
Yep.
that Lisa has to leave early. If she might have some comments in light of what Anna just talked about, it might be good to at least solicit those before she has to go.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for reminding me, Herb. So Lisa, obviously later on in the discussion, probably 10, 15 minutes from now, we're going to be talking about visioning. If there's anything you'd like to share from your perspective on what we're just talking about now, the rural character, or anything else, the exercise is going to be thinking of vision type statements. And I've got an example, but I'm not going to spend the time to do it now. So I'm sort of putting you on the spot, but anything that you'd like to share with us or have us be thinking about for the rest of the meeting while you're gone.
Well, I would, while I know the rural character usually relates to Western Coventry, I certainly would not want to see the eastern part of Coventry totally left out of the discussion, as far as, not that we have a whole lot of open space, but protecting what we may have. Unfortunately, we have a lot of development going on right now off of Tioga Avenue, and it's all housing. And you know, that from my perspective in Eastern Coventry, would have loved to have seen that be kept as open land. It's too late to do anything about it now, but if there is still open land in Eastern Coventry, I don't think that should be, we shouldn't only think of Western Coventry when we think of open land.
Correct. And I've been very supportive of land trust purchases in the eastern end of town, because I think it's important. When I was on the land trust, they did actually do site walks in the eastern end, and I was surprised what beautiful treasures there are in that area, and I want to see those preserved for people. So that's important too.
Yeah, the town has some great properties off of Sandy Bottom Road and Whipple. And they're beautiful pieces of property. And, you know, so I guess my comment is just, don't only think about Western Coventry when you think about rural character. and open space. I think, I'd like to see the discussion include the eastern part of Coventry also.
The other issue that I would like to just take up at some point in time, maybe not today's agenda or some other agenda, is that what is the balance between economic development and residential development? And is the vision to remain a residential community relying very little on business and corporations being developed here and bringing in tax money? Or are we going to have a vision in which says we're going to be a residential community with maybe a little bit of a tax base from a commercial property, but are we basically a residential community? Because that's a very important decision, because if it's a residential community, the tax base is on the taxpayers, the people whose houses are being assessed. And they don't necessarily want to see, they don't want to pay the bills to get the services that they want. So when we do the visioning, I'd like to really explore that whole concept.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. That absolutely. I mean, that's something. These are the challenging questions that come up in a comprehensive planning process. And what we'll do to start the visioning exercise in a few minutes is look at some of the input from the public meeting and also from the public survey and from the previous public surveys as well, where you'll see that people are saying both. They're saying we want to preserve the rural character, and I'm putting it in quotes now because of this discussion we've just had. We want to preserve Coventry's rural character. We also want to see more economic development. We want to see more businesses coming in. And as we know, as planners and as community members, there has to be a balance. There's a push and pull when you're talking about preserving open space and bringing in new development, residential development, commercial development. So there are ways to make it all work together. But there are decisions that have to be made about how you design your land use plan around it. So we will get to that later in this discussion. Any other comments on the review as it stands currently? Okay. The other housekeeping item I wanted to just bring up is that we recently received, thanks to Herb, the town has a strategic plan document that was completed within the last few months, or a few months from when we started our process, that was shared with us. Just a few weeks ago, we got another, what was for us a different version of a strategic planning document from the police department that Herb had received and he shared. And my first response was, oh, thank you, we've already seen this. But I looked closer and it was actually more robust. And so I'm bringing it to your attention because, and Herb, this is maybe mostly for you, but in case anyone else has any, maybe Anne has any knowledge, if there's been a different process, or maybe if there's a different, more complete strategic planning document. The biggest thing that differed from what we saw last week from the police department and what we received originally was that the police department, the most recent document we saw had discrete goals and I think goals and objectives, and the previous documents we had did not. So if each department has something that is that thorough, we absolutely would like to see that at this point. So I just wanted to put that request out.
Yes, last fall, we had a strategic planning workshop in which each department was given a certain format to follow. And each department was supposed to be talking about just a general description of the department, manpower, projects, et cetera. And they were all supposed to have strategic goals. And so we have that. So if you were to speak to the town manager, you should be able to get access to that document.
Thank you, Anne. And the town manager did provide us with that document. It's just that what we saw from the police department most recently was slightly more refined, if you will. And maybe it's just each department had a, maybe they just went above and beyond. So it'll be good for me to double check and make sure that we've got the latest and greatest.
I'm not sure what the town manager has provided you. The town manager, we do have a strategic plan, which the town council adopted. But also each of the departments presented their strategic plan. So I don't know if you have strategic plans for each of the departments, plus the one that was done for the town. So you need to check on that, because I don't
Okay.
know where the police strategic plan fits in this.
Okay, we'll double check. Herb,
I'll follow
with you
up.
on that.
Yep, I'll follow
Great.
up. Yep.
Thank you. All right, so next up, it's 5:30 now. I would like to take no more than the next 20 minutes to do a quick review of some of the previously proposed actions. I'm gonna open up a file here and share my screen again. So
Emily?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I just need to sign off now. Sorry,
right.
folks, I have another obligation, but I plan on watching the rest of the meeting on the YouTube recording.
great. Thanks, Lisa. And if you
Thank
have any
you.
other questions or comments after you watch that, just send me an email.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. All right. So right now I'm sharing a spreadsheet with you all. Head nods, thumbs up. Can you see that?
Yes,
Great. Is it large enough, or would it be better to be a little bit bigger? Thumbs up. Okay. So this is not a comprehensive list. It is if I were to show you everything in the spreadsheet, but what I've done is sort of shorten it up. We took all of the actions presented in the 2000, the last comprehensive plan that the town adopted and approved. And we have been, based on a lot of the research that we've done and everything that's gone into those ECNO chapters that you've started to review, we've done our best at updating whatever we know about these actions, whether or not they were implemented, and how. And then we also asked a couple of the committee members who were involved in the past planning efforts, whether it was that 1999 effort, whether it was a 2010 effort, or whether it was the more recent 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19 effort, to see if we could get some ideas. And we have pulled together some ideas. There are others that are still question marks. And I just thought we would do some quick sort of crowdsourcing here with the committee members to see if we can get any more detail on these. This is sort of a due diligence process, I'll say. I don't expect that we will have clarity on all of these actions. It's nearly impossible. I do a lot of different types of planning. One of the types of planning I do regularly is hazard mitigation planning, and that happens every 5 years. It's nearly impossible to understand what was behind actions written 5 years ago, never mind 21 years ago. So I don't expect that we're going to understand all of these and be able to say, well, this is what this was about, and this is why it didn't happen. But if there's a good explanation, best that we have it. So that's what we're going to do here. We are not going to go through all 78 actions or 96. There's a lot of them. Just a few that seemed relevant and for which we think it would be really useful to have some input. So the
And
first
just,
here, yes.
Emily, sorry, it's Herb. Sorry to interrupt. I apologize. I'm interrupting too much. But Anne did provide some input, and she had kind of put it in column D, as in David. I just noticed that I don't see her comments in here, but I did, unless for some reason they just came to me, but she did provide comment.
I do have Anne's comments in here.
Oh, they're there. Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
do.
I couldn't scroll.
Yeah, thank you to Anne, to Herb, to Sherry, and to who else did I send this to? I'm blanking. Someone on this committee is not receiving. Julie helped out, I believe. Thank you. So,
Emily,
yes.
quick question. So it looks like many of these items, people put a lot of work into already. And who's to say that many of those items are not still applicable now? And then rather have the committee here reinvent the wheel, there's probably quite a bit here that can still be leveraged. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. 100% that's true. We're not wiping anything off the board right now. This is more just an investigative effort to make sure that we're not missing anything. A lot of these issues, I can't say a lot of these actions are already coming out in the work that we're doing because we're not there yet. But a lot of the issues that would be behind some of these actions have already come out in our work, which is why some of them I'm not even asking about, because we've already recognized that need. So there are just a few on here that bear a little bit more looking into, I'll say. So I'm going to start with the 1.2. This is under the land use section. And the action was to formulate and adopt a watershed protection overlay district to establish specific watershed growth management controls to minimize impacts on water quality and protect groundwater and wetland resources. To my knowledge, this hasn't been done. I wanted to just poll the committee to see if maybe there had been something that was completed along these lines, any effort, any success towards this, or had it been proposed and shot down in a public meeting or anything like that. I'm seeing head shakes, as in no, has not happened. Okay. We do have a note to follow up with Conservation Committee, but we'll leave that as a likely no. Okay, moving along down here to number 2.4. We're now under what we're calling now the transportation section. Transfer jurisdictional and maintenance responsibility of selected heavily utilized roadways over to RIDOT, Rhode Island Department of Transportation, and transfer similar responsibilities for less utilized roadways to the town. The purpose of this would be to transfer capital improvement costs of heavily utilized roads to the state responsibility and transfer similar responsibilities for less utilized roads to the town. This is obviously a question that would best be discussed with DPW, but again, in case anyone had any institutional knowledge of anything that had been done, it'd be great to hear about it.
Well,
Anne, go ahead.
I can't find my hand raised, so excuse me.
That's all right, I can see it.
As far as I know, the state is responsible for major highways that go through our town. And whenever there's an issue, we have to call on the state to take action. And then they call like a traffic committee or a traffic commission to study the issue. And so basically, we stay out of issues relating to state roads. So I'm not really sure about this transfer of responsibility, because it seems quite clear what roads are responsible, which roads have responsibility by the town and vice versa for the state. So I'm not sure what transfer cost means.
So there are opportunities for communities, so numbered state routes, for instance, that aren't state highways per se. There are instances where communities take jurisdiction over those roadways because they want control over what gets built there. They want control over the profile of the road. Maybe they want to do a complete streets project and they've got the funding to do so, and they don't want to have to wait on the state to do it for them. Or maybe they want to reduce speed limits or something of the sort. In other cases, the town doesn't want anything to do with the maintenance and management of a roadway, so they want that to be under the state's purview, and the state has an interest. That works out. So I don't have a super detailed understanding of where this is coming from in Coventry, what roadways maybe in particular were being thought of as a transfer, because I can't say without looking at the map, honestly, which ones are under the jurisdiction of the town versus the state of the numbered state routes. So we'll pass on this for now. We'll follow up with DPW. We'll get some more detailed.
Good idea.
All right. Annually evaluate the need to expand and enhance public transit services within the town to provide affordable and functional transportation opportunities for all town residents. So the key here is this annual evaluation. The question for the committee is, do we know of any town process that happens every year to sit down and discuss public transit needs or mobility needs even.
We never discuss it.
Sherry, go ahead.
Good, hold on. Okay,
There you
sorry,
go.
I have technical difficulties.
No worries.
So I do know because of the work that I do that the state goes around and they're the ones that determine where they're gonna have the public transportation and where the most need is. I do know for a fact in recent times, there have been major cuts to the transportation department. And when that happened, this is going back a few years ago, it reduced a lot of the services that were provided to the town of Coventry, along with a lot of other towns. So it just isn't only Coventry that's been affected, it's throughout the entire state. So for example, I have clients that used to be able to take a ride, personal ride transportation for the elderly where they send the smaller bus to pick them up. They're no longer eligible because now they're not within 10 miles of a bus stop because their bus stop was moved. They've taken away bus stops and they've reduced them. So that is a state thing that is happening or has happened, I should say.
And they're not asking the town to say, what has your planning about transit been this past year so that we can incorporate that into our measures? They're just saying, this is what we have to do, this is what we're doing.
Pretty much, it appears that way. This is what we have the funding for. Like, we had a bus stop that literally would drop our clients off right at the bottom of the hill for one of our properties. And now they drop them down the road. And I have disabled people that have to walk quite a distance now.
Am I referring to that properly as paratransit services?
Yes, I would believe that would be paratransit services.
Okay. All right, thanks, Sherry.
You're welcome.
I think this next one can be captured essentially in what we know based on the conversation we just had, and that's about transit improvements with the shelters and signage and all of that. This one specifically is referring to Tioga Avenue, the Tioga Avenue revitalization program. So instead of asking about the transit improvements and whether they've been constructed, I'm actually more curious about the Tioga Avenue revitalization program, and if that is a term or an initiative that anyone here is familiar with.
I have not heard of a Tioga Avenue revitalization program. The only time there's a conversation about Tioga Avenue is in reference to if we were to put sewers down, some people have said the sewers should go down Tioga Avenue because that is a potential place for business development. There is a bus stop on Tioga Avenue, and that is at the job lot.
Okay, but a new, has it been updated, that bus terminal?
It is not a terminal, it's just a bus stop. It's the end of a bus route. And the bus waits at the job lot. People park there and they get on the bus. And I believe it goes through West Warwick and then eventually gets to Providence, but I don't know how often it goes through town.
Sure, no, we've got the details on that, and I misspoke, and when I said terminal, I meant shelter. So is it, has it been recently, is there a shelter? Did they build a shelter? Is it? No,
There was no
just a
shelter.
stop, just a sign and a bus stop. All right. All right then. And we're going to skip over this one for the same reason. We'll defer to the information that we have from the state. 214 is aggressively participate in Rhode Island Department of Transportation's ongoing feasibility study for alternative transit in abandoned rail corridors. So this one, the question really is about the specific opportunity to implement transit in abandoned rail corridors, which is something that I haven't heard of. Wondering if this is something initiative that anyone has heard of locally.
Well, I know that the bike path is on what used to be a rail corridor.
Right.
So, I mean, if this was written in 2020, I mean, that's over 20 years ago. But that's where the bike path is, on a rail corridor.
Yeah, and that's that's where my brain goes to as well with abandoned rail corridors. And that's been the case for decades, really. I haven't ever heard of abandoned rail corridors being thought of as potential avenues for transit expansion. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad idea, but it is sort of a surprise to see here. So, but it doesn't sound like anyone knows more about it.
Well, this is Bob. Back in 2020, when we did, and the bike path didn't really exist, and there was a lot of discussion about how to utilize that rail corridor. And one idea would have been a very light rail or, isolated bus route that could be rapid transit that would use it before the bike path went in.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. That gives some context here. And that might have been what was behind this action.
And you might see some words on that in the original. I haven't found my copy yet, so I haven't been able to go back and look at some of that stuff.
Okay. I'm just making some notes for myself here. Thank you for that comment.
I think also, Emily, while you're typing, this document, I think, is that Tioga, related to the Tioga, it's the Sandy Bottom.
Okay. What year is that from her?
There's reference to in here about doing I'm going back to your previous, the Tioga.
Tioga Avenue Revitalization Program.
Yeah, I think it was wrapped into the discussion of the Sandy Bottom thing. So there's a whole sort of plan that's incorporated into that as a overlay district for zoning.
What year was that report published?
July 2007.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's actually up. It's actually up on the town webpage too.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure we have it. Go ahead, Sharon.
Herb, wasn't that created so going forward when new businesses and new developments went in, they followed along with that plan? I thought that was the purpose of that.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why I think it fits in with a lot of the things that when we're talking, again, it's the overall revitalization area. A ton of the area that's in this relates to similar kinds of activities that I think would come under the italicized revitalization program that's mentioned there. I don't think this is it specifically, but when I sort of like Google the stuff, that title, this thing comes up. So I agree with you. Yes, this is the guideline that the town with some of the vision as to what they wanted to do in the Sandy Bottom area, which included Tioga and some of the surrounding area.
Herb, does that report say anything about the town's economic development loan program? Because that's my next question.
No, it's more focused on mixed use development, architectural design, sort of pedestrian circulation, traffic, got some energy efficiency and green design, streetscape type of things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of what, if you remember at the first public meeting, everybody said we need sort of like a centralized, a town center type of thing.
Yeah.
And they all kind of pointed to this area. So I think this document is, or our discussion was a little bit of a lot of folks knowing that this discussion occurred in the past.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll definitely make sure to revisit that document and see if it can answer any of these other questions for us. I've moved on to the economic development section, actions in here. And the first one I wanted to check in on was maintain and refund the town's economic development loan program. And none of the committee members that we've spoken to thus far have any knowledge of this program. So I don't expect that we will here, but just in case, any thoughts, ideas? Bob, does this ring a bell to you, the town's economic development loan program from your experience in the 1999 planning process?
I think there was some discussion on doing something about it so that businesses that wanted to come in could get a loan to help them start up at a
Yeah.
more economical rate than going to banks. But I never saw or heard anything about that gaining any traction.
Okay.
Bob, was
It's-
was there a focus on, because usually those kinds of things get set up through community development block grant funds or something along those lines, which would sort of benefit small startup businesses that might be normally rejected by a more traditional lending institution?
Well,
Or
I
was it
don't
just
think
an overall? Yeah.
yeah, I don't think the group got into the specifics, but more of what could we do to help get some more business, small to medium business into the town. And that was one idea that came to the surface, but I don't think it ever gained any traction.
Okay. But that some of it, I'm just mentioning that just because we've dealt with community development block grants quite a bit in the past. And I most especially with Julie's office and housing. But I do know that community development block grants can be used for economic development related stuff as well. You just have to have at least 51% supporting low, moderate income families.
Emily, could we go back to 3.2 for a moment, please?
Sure.
The reason I wanted to mention this is that it has been talked often about hiring an economic development director, but we never have the funds to do that. There was an economic development commission appointed, and they sort of fizzled away, and there was another push for us to do it again. It took us a long time to even recruit people to want to be on this commission. We did appoint a commission. We did get the required number of people. There was a presentation by members of that commission, the president and the chair and the vice chair, and they had some wonderful ideas to promote business. And they were also supposed to have a session in which they promoted businesses that had been with the same family, in the same family for over 50 years. And there's a goodly number of people. And then all of a sudden, that commission has not been meeting. I don't think it has a full complement of people. They haven't had a full quorum. Progress is very slow. And now it seems like everything they were going to roll out in the spring is now into the fall. And I noticed that, some of these items, 3.3, 3.4, et cetera, many of these really need some kind of economic development director. We can't rely on volunteers to do this important work. So that if the vision is to develop the town so that we do promote businesses to come in, we're going to have to be very serious about the kinds of recommendations we make to make sure that we have the paid staff to do what needs to be done. Because most of these things all these things that I see listed here are not going to be done by volunteers.
Right. Yeah, and I think if there's anything we can do and to connect with the folks on that commission that you just mentioned, because it would be, it's pretty critical in my mind that where even if they're not done with their process yet, that we're incorporating whatever they have brought together into our planning process, into our economic development visions and goals, et cetera. So maybe it warrants a separate meeting with members of that group.
I'll get you the contact information and send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing to think about too, Emily, is that I've served as president of a community development corporation before. So if we might be able to tweak some of this whereby if there were some staffers that were recommended or what have you to help, sort of be, I'm just going to toot my own horn for a second, is that if there was a staff or two that could come into the town at more of a not necessarily a director level, but what might be the next level down from that. With my experience, I can lead that person or persons as if we factored it into, I'm the director of planning and development, right? So we could probably weave something into the existing structure for the town. And I've had a whole bunch of experience in creating micro enterprise loan funds of last resort, as well as managing a 3-town loan fund. Again, served as the president of the development corporation, that sort of thing. So there's that I can help work even with the committee in drafting ideas to help with direction in which they may want to go.
That's very encouraging. That's very encouraging. It's a jump shot start that we've been lacking.
Right.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jan. I'm gonna scroll back down here. And actually, I was gonna ask about 313, which is prepare a detailed specific area plan to revitalize the Tioga Gap corridor jointly with RIDOT preliminary and final engineering plans for roadway improvement. There's a lot in here. I'm thinking that probably we need to go back to that Sandy Bottom plan. Does that sound right to folks? That there's probably a link there.
I think it's
Yeah,
that whole,
this is Bob. I'm not-
discussion of the town, sort of a town center, a real focus. We have lots of historic districts that people are hold close to their hearts, but there really isn't sort of like the center of Coventry. And that really was a theme that came out in that first public hearing. And it included discussion of Sandy Bottom Road, Tioga, Main Street, sort of thing. There was kind of a general area. So I can even think that you might be able to raise it to a higher level and then have some of these as bullet points underneath them.
Yeah. I agree, Herb. Thank you.
Yeah, this-
Oh,
Hello?
go ahead.
Okay, sorry. There was another group that met sometime after 1990 about, trying to coordinate a vision for Tioga Avenue to RIDOT. However, the group ended up being very fractionalized, where certain people were trying to protect their businesses that were basically, a car length away from the sidewalk. And there were other people that tried to look at a vision of trying to get that road to 4 or 5 lanes to allow some smooth flow of traffic and lure, businesses that would see a higher traffic volume in. And I don't think that anything ever came of that for just that reason, because, there was fiefdoms protecting their businesses. And with, unfortunately, with no vision where to go in 20 years.
It wasn't so much a public visioning as it was a battle of individual property owners' interests.
Yes.
Okay. Good to know. I said I wanted to spend 20 minutes on this, and I'm a little bit over. So I think we know that we don't have a water quality protection plan based on the fact that we don't have a water quality overlay district, at least for the townwide. Tom, I see you unmuting, so I'm gonna let you jump in on this.
Yeah, the only thing I think that I would add here, or at least put in as a note, is that whatever water quality protection plan that we want to take a look at would include stormwater, wastewater, right? Herb, you introduced us to that woman the other day. Wastewater is a huge problem to the 3 major lakes that we have here in the town. And stormwater is a problem everywhere. And the town currently has neither the funding from the state or federal, and they don't have all the in-kind services to be able to pull off any kind of projects like this, which are huge. And people want to protect natural resources, right? This a common theme that comes out throughout the entire survey is protecting open and natural spaces, and this is a detriment to that goal.
Indeed, and you will read a lot about that next week. I think you'll enjoy the services and facilities chapters. It's got the stormwater section and the wastewater section, and there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, and I know Lisa would go on for the rest of the meeting about the wastewater side. So maybe good that she has retired, but she's listening right now. So that's good.
Right, great.
Emily, is your microphone covered up at all?
It is not, but there is a thunderstorm passing over. So
Okay.
if anything about my clarity has changed, I imagine that's it. I did see a light flicker about 5 minutes ago. So
Okay.
am I clear enough for us to go on?
Yeah, keep going, but just to know you're you're not really breaking up, but you sound like you're in a background pipe noise.
Okay, well, I'll come closer and see if that helps.
That's a lot better.
Great. Any knowledge of a townwide hazardous materials and underground storage tank inventory? This is not something that we came across. Okay.
Emily, there used to be a underground storage tank inventory done by DEM at the state.
Okay.
I doubt the town would have expanded on that in any way. I think it, but yeah, it used to be, I think I saw that it was recently updated in the RIGIS, so you may be able to even find a data layer there.
Now, when you say used to be, is that something that you think might have happened at one point in time and they just recently created it into a GIS layer, or is it something that maybe they've kept up with?
I think from what I recollect, there was a very ancient underground storage tank inventory that was in RIGIS. Then for a long time, there was no updates to it at all. So it just languished. It was still in the database, but it languished. And I'm not certain of this, but I seem to recall seeing recently within the last year that there was a new updated version of that out on the RIGIS database. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but
DEM still has it, yeah.
I made note of it because I'm like, oh, they finally updated that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it right here. Maybe I'll put it in the chat. Is there a chat box for us today? No.
Yes, there should be.
And then there's also,
I think we have it turned off somehow.
I'm sure you're aware of the TRI inventory from EPA, toxics release inventory.
Yeah.
I don't know whether any of those places fall within Coventry or not, but it would be worth taking a quick look.
Yeah, I actually, to be honest, I can't say off the top of my head, but I know that we did review that for the services and facilities chapter. So that'll, if they were there, it'll be recorded.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I think, all right, we're almost done here. These I'm really curious about. So first, we're down to recreational facilities, recreational resources. 7.5, establish a program of recreational water safety and enforcement within the town. So this sounded to me a lot like a town lifeguard program that maybe would be implemented from Parks and Rec. Does that exist?
They do have lifeguards and all that, but this year there's very few to none because of the inability to find them.
And I've heard that in so many towns this year. I don't know why kids don't want to be lifeguards anymore.
No one wants to work anymore. They just want to get paid.
Right. So does this sound like anything else to folks, a program of recreational water safety and enforcement within the town? Was there ever an initiative maybe with the police department that they wanted to have a patrol boat out to monitor, people drinking beers on their boats or anything like that? Am I missing something with this?
Well, when I wrote this, I hadn't heard of it. I heard there was patrolling, but the other night I heard that some of the fire districts do go out and regulate some boating traffic, but I don't know enough about it, but it is a fire district boat. So that needs to be investigated.
We do note in the plan, we recognize that the fire district has a boat, as does the police
Yes.
department. We just we didn't get much about what they're using it for. So I'm glad that you at least validate that. Thank you, Anne.
Well, I didn't validate it. I just heard a rumor. So
Okay. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I would point out around the lifeguards, I might almost put in there specifically for the Briar Point Beach.
yeah.
So there's no swimming at Johnson's Pond, it's all private. And the town just barely recognizes Upper Dam Pond, although it is a town beach. So I would put, there's been a lot of trouble at Briar Point, so specifically there. I think the other thing that might be worth noting is what's the definition and responsibilities of the Rhode Island DEM to do patrolling of some of these? So you might see DEM out there the first day of the season and then they become non-existent. And if there's any way to leverage the DEM for patrolling, but also for checking boats for aquatic invasive species, which is a major reason why these lakes are so inundated today. Is
Yeah.
the boats.
I've only heard of DEM patrolling the portion of the bike path for which they're responsible. And I have met the gentlemen who have 3 assignments, 3 state or 2 state parks assigned to them, plus the bike path. So DEM does have some responsibilities in controlling or managing the areas for which they do have responsibility, but I don't know anything about waterways.
What section is that, Ann? Is that more Western Coventry?
It starts at Summit General Store and goes east. And I think it goes maybe to Aloha Campground, somewhere along there.
All right.
And so the whole bike path is patrolled partially by DEM. And maybe it goes to Phillips Hill, because now that I remember, there is a sign that says the Greenway. So my guess is it goes from Summit General Store to Phillips Hill. And then maybe at that point or beyond, it's the town's responsibility.
All right. Yeah, I'm on the bike path twice a day and I've never seen one, but I'm mostly on the eastern side,
Yeah.
east of the cemetery. So that might not be their area.
Well, I met 2 gentlemen in a truck who were actually cutting down some trees. And I asked them who they were and what they're doing, and they're responsible for Goddard Park and for, I think, maybe Cole State Park and for the bike path. They have, Beaver Tail. Beaver Tail was one of their responsibilities.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. The next one here, 7.6, is acquire a site for Western Coventry Park to provide comprehensive recreational facilities for West or Western Coventry residents. So Anne provided comment on this, saying that there is a park at Providence Place. And I know there are state parks in Western Coventry. Just wondering if anyone knows of a specific initiative, if there was maybe a specific piece of land that was of interest to the town 20 years ago, or if this is, maybe it's just a broad statement that folks wanted to have a municipal park in Western Coventry.
I haven't heard of any information about that.
Okay. Bob, any thoughts on that one?
Yes, this was something that I remember, and I think, again, there's work comp plan that talks about, the fact that there's a lot of the people in Western with children basically say, I've got to drive to the other side of town to take my kids to a playground. And why can't there be something out here for us? And I think that was the focus of this, was to kind of provide a facility at the western end of town so that they weren't driving all the way to the other end of town to go to a playground. And since that time, there's been a little work done on the playground at Western Coventry School by a group of volunteers that
Right.
did a bunch of work and improved it. But that was a drop in the bucket. But it does get some action when you drive by. You'll see some families there sometimes. But I think it was looking for something bigger and more substantial for, families to take their children to.
Okay, that's helpful context. Thank you. I'm not going to say that didn't come up this time around, but it wasn't something that jumped out. It's certainly not going to be in the summary that I'm presenting today, and that means nothing other than I'm saying it so that I don't mislead anyone to believe that I am disregarding this idea by omission later in the discussion. And mainly, I appreciate Bob you providing that context, and we'll look into that again and see if there's any threads of that carried forward that we didn't pick up on yet in the public comment we've received so far this time around. All right.
It might not be.
Sorry.
Hello. It might not be in the comment, but there may be some words in the original comp plan that give it some context.
Sure. Thank you. And I think the same will go about phases 3 and 4 of Foster Memorial Park plan to provide additional game and practice space, enhance natural trails and recreational opportunities for town residents, and eventually develop a town aquatic facility.
Whoa.
Sorry, it sounded like someone was about to comment on this. No.
Emily, I'm finding some of these ideas like off the wall. I mean, like, where did these ideas come from? I mean,
Sure, and that's why I said at the beginning, and I don't expect that we're gonna be able to unearth what's behind all of them, and that's fine.
at somewhere back in 2020, was it 2000?
It would have been 1999, really, that this was taking shape.
1999. I mean, someone had a vision, and I'm not sure what is the background for that vision, but I'm seeing a lot of interesting ideas that never came to fruition, that have never been discussed before. And so that says to us that when we develop a plan, we want to develop a plan which is a vision for the future, but also one that is realistic and doable.
Yes. Yeah, and really, like I said earlier in the meeting today, that is a logical progression from the needs and desires and hopes and vision that are brought out of the public process from what we're doing and what you guys did 5 years ago. These project ideas, action ideas aren't going to come out of thin air. They need to be rationalized based on the need and the desires of the community. So, which is why, to Bob's last comment, I'm saying, well, we want to make sure that if this was brought up again, we're not missing it, because someone clearly cared enough about it 20 years ago to put it in the plan. And we want to make sure we're not skipping over it if someone or if a group of people are still thinking this way. But we hadn't heard it thus far. So.
No, to Ann's point, just to counter that a little bit, I mean, the other half of this is, there's a lot of effort that goes into creating a comprehensive plan. But if you write it, put it on the shelf and never look at the action item, it's never going to come to fruition.
Sure.
And Bob, do you know where Sealy Park is? It's item
No.
713.
No, I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, that was really the last question for the group was where and what is Sealy Park? But I don't see any takers on that one.
The
All right, so,
Raina would know, the Parks and Rec director, and she may have referenced it in the section that you sent, but.
That have been what turned into the Fish Hill Road complex at the bottom of Johnson's Pond, the southern end of Johnson's Pond, near the Coventry Pines Country Club.
Hmm.
I don't know, there's a big soccer complex there.
I'm going to follow that thread.
Maybe they
Find
just, maybe they just decided on a different name for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the only hint I've got so far. So I'll follow the lead. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to open up a document that just some basic ideas to get us into a visioning discussion. Any questions or thoughts for discussion while I'm doing that? All right. So. All right, so like I said, I've got a really brief summary of some of the key themes from the public meeting and the future land use mapping activity that we did a little over a month ago. You all have seen this. We shared with you a PowerPoint presentation and then also the results of the public survey, which is the themes from the public survey we've got under item B here. And I just, with the rest of our time here today, really want to, we've just looked at some of the previously proposed actions. I also sent out a list of previously proposed goals and visions, or vision statements, I should say. And what we're trying to do now is usher some of that forward to see, what's still valid, but also come up with new visions where that's appropriate. It's been a long time. Certainly the effort 5 years ago will have a lot more relevancy to now, and that's why I shared those visions with you a few weeks ago. But it's really important that we take into account the public outreach we've done so far this year. So I want this to be a high-level discussion. I don't want to get caught up in the minutia of exactly the details of what projects need to happen. Visioning is high level, and one of the ways we can do it, and what I'm going to propose for this discussion, is that we think about the key elements of this plan. We don't need to have one statement for each element, but we'll start thinking about vision ideas, and as we do that, I might suggest, well, is this something that we could, maybe this is where we can think about economic development and land use together, or something like that. So just to recap here, I'm going to read aloud for the record and for Bob the key themes from the public meeting and the future land use mapping activity. One is protect natural resources and open space in Western Coventry. And I think if there's a way that I could answer Anne's question from earlier, what does the protecting the rural character of Coventry mean? I read it as protecting the natural resources in town and the open space in Western Coventry, which I think echoes a bit of what Sherry said. Now, how you do that is a different thing, but again, we're sticking to high level here. Another key theme is to repurpose and reuse the existing built environment for commercial and mixed use development. We heard that a lot during the public meeting in a lot of different ways. The third theme from that public meeting would be increasing the diversity and variety of recreation opportunities. And this is specifically, we've actually had a lot of good ideas, specific ideas about this, but again, bringing it back up to the high level, we're hearing that families don't have enough options, especially in all times of year, for all family sizes, for all types of gatherings, that sort of thing. So summarizing it as increasing the diversity and variety of recreation opportunities. And developing a walkable and inviting.
Emily, you're really breaking up, Emily.
Are you guys seeing the screen?
We see the screen fine, but we can't hear you. You're breaking up. Maybe a headset or something.
Yeah, you sort of come in and out. You come back and then you're lost and then you come back.
And honestly, all I'm getting is static, so I'm not sure if I'm even working.
Let's try this. Any? No, I'm not hearing you.
We can't hear you, Emily.
Okay, let me try one.
I think it might be your connection.
It's definitely your connection, Emily.
I
You're-
can hear you all now.
Yeah,
Are you hearing me any better?
that's
Yes.
better right there, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
I think,
it's the 28 open applications that does it.
oh, you're seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
How embarrassing.
Oh, no, we've all been there.
Yeah. No one multitasks, right? Okay. Better?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So I was just reviewing some of the key themes from the public meeting again, and this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but really, these are the things that we heard loud and clear at that meeting. And I was just reviewing the third one, which was increase the diversity and variety of recreational opportunities. Moving on to the fourth, which is develop a walkable and inviting town center. The next list
I just want to pause one moment.
please.
I'm remembering what Lisa said at the beginning of the meeting, and she said that it's important to consider open space in the eastern side of the community. So we've got open space in Western Coventry, and I know people want open space in Western Coventry, but maybe it's easier to, I'll use the word market a comprehensive plan if people believe that everyone's needs are being considered. So if we just, do we just want to keep open space in Western Coventry, or are we thinking about open space in the community at large?
I think the latter, Anne, and yes, the latter is the answer to your question. To get back to this summary, this is just a teaser here. This is just sort of to wet the palate. So you're following along exactly in the way that I'm hoping that you will hear. We didn't maybe hear that quite as much at the public meeting. We did hear conversation about improving the playgrounds and the recreational spaces that do exist in Eastern Coventry. And I think that taking that a step further is really important. So I'm sort of starting that note now. But let me read these 4 bullets that came out of as sort of high level themes from the public survey, and then let's dig into what we'll get back into what you're talking about right now. So themes from the public survey, just to add on to those themes from the public meeting that I just highlighted. First one is asking in response to the question why we love Coventry. We're hearing it's friends and family, it's the location and convenience of that location. It's the natural beauty of the town, open space and trails, the rural setting, and safety. It's a safe community. The biggest challenges for the town, we heard loud and clear, managing growth while maintaining open space and protecting natural resources. So just broadly, the fact that there's a lot of consensus about the desire to continue to protect natural resources and open space over and over and over again. This is what comes out of the survey. And to your point, Anne, the survey doesn't necessarily point out or isolate Western Coventry as being the sole source or the sole area where open space ought to be protected. I think maybe we infer that. So it's important that we're having that conversation. And then lastly, for biggest challenges, it has come up again and again. The term used here is inconsistent municipal government. I think buried in that term or embedded in that term is also an issue with high staff turnover in recent decades, and just how that really hamstrung, well, that's not a word, how that leaves the challenges that creates towards getting things done, towards accomplishing goals set out in a comprehensive plan, and really towards consistency of operations, which makes it hard for the residents and economic development and really everything else. So those are our challenges. Question about what businesses we want. So there were a lot of options. I've listed here all options that the respondents, either 40% or more of respondents who answered this question selected. Microbrewery was big. Locally owned businesses in general, people really lean towards that, supporting locally owned businesses. A destination entertainment venue. There has been talk about like a large sporting complex, and I don't know how much people answering the survey know about that proposal or idea. So they may have, there may be a specific thought in mind when responding to that. I can't say, but certainly there was a lot of excitement about it on this question. Live music, which is something I haven't heard in comments, but certainly I know a lot of other communities that are bringing, they're incorporating live music into a lot of public events. Outdoor outfitters, playgrounds, restaurants, bars, and taverns. So that's what we want to see more of in terms of commercial. And then housing. Folks say we need more single family and we need more housing for elders. 38% want to see more accessory apartment. So accessory dwelling units or accessory apartments. These would be something like in-law units or small homes built either on top of a garage or behind an existing home. There are a lot of ways this can look, but there wasn't as much agreement on this question, and so the 38% was actually one of the higher choices in terms of response rate. So those are the key
There's
themes
the
from
new
those
law
two
now,
sources.
Emily, too.
Pardon me?
There's the new law now with the accessory dwelling units that passed. It's now in effect. So it's a planner's nightmare, but accessory dwelling units are now enacted with very little there's not a lot I can hold, there's no
Regulatory
Solomon
purview.
swords to hang over someone's head. So you can actually have two separate dwelling units that are detached. They no longer have to be attached or anything. It'd be two separate houses on the same property. It still would stay in the same ownership, so you don't have two separate parcels, but the law just opened the door right up to accessory dwelling units that's been sailing through the country, and it's pretty much promoted by AARP.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that, right, you said still under the same ownership, but there's probably an owner occupancy requirement, right?
No,
Really?
no,
Nope.
nope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch this one take hold in the state.
Huh.
Herb, just a comment there. One of the takeaways that I saw from the survey was the comment around aging in place.
Mhm.
And I think that probably goes along with some of the comments here about having, an apartment where people can stay in one place.
Yep.
Doesn't have to
Yeah,
go,
100%.
assisted living or
Yep.
something.
That's why AARP is the big, they're really the big advocates, lobbyists behind all this across the country. And there's a lot of states that are just grabbing right hold of this and passing it right and left. Yep.
All right, so this is where we get into the fun part. Again, those were sort of to wet the palate here. Based on all of that and based on what we've already talked about today, some of the chapters you've already read, we're not finalizing anything here today, but there have been a lot of good ideas, and I want to try to, as a committee, see if we can put some thoughts on paper. So ideas for vision statements, and I'm giving an example, and this is not something that is meant to stick, but just a type of vision statement that one might include in a comprehensive plan. Coventry's local economy is deeply connected to the town's history, culture, and natural resources, and it thrives from its location at the crossroads of two states. The vibrant economy draws entrepreneurs and established businesses or partnerships or opportunities, et cetera. So this example shows a couple of things. It shows that you can talk about multiple subject areas or multiple elements in the same breath. That's fine, that's allowed. It also shows that when we speak about visions, we're talking about what we see our ideal community to be. So we don't need to be, they don't need to be action statements. These are statements of what the community is, a vision of what the community looks like in its best form. Does that make sense? So that's just a start. Since we've had so much discussion already about open space and rural character and preservation of open space, maybe we should start with something along those lines.
I think one of the things missing, and you can see it in some of the challenges for the survey, the planning topic priorities, is everyone, rural is like number one.
Yeah.
But I think I'm interpreting some of that rural look for Route 3. It is the main, the Tioga Avenue is the main corridor for Coventry, especially coming off, I-95. And Western is rural. You can go out 117 and you've got all of the rural elements that, drew people here. But, go back 30, 40 years, Tioga Avenue did not look like Tioga Avenue looks today. And I think a lot of the village centers, that keeps coming up. That came up a lot in the survey. And I think people are referring to, along that Route 3 corridor. I think that's an important aspect, because when you come into the town, if you came down, Arnold Road right now or Hopkins Hill Road, you're not going to feel you're in rural Coventry.
Mhm.
You're going to say, I just drove into this nightmare and I don't even know how I'm going to get home yet. So I think that has somewhere, about the ruralness. And that's in the eastern end of town, this eastern end of it, where
So-
the businesses are, and the connection with the Sandy Bottom to 117.
Yeah.
Sandy Bottom's looking much better. We have the Whipple Field there. There's improvements going on, that whole business plaza. The bridge is getting done over. It's going to have sidewalks, so we're making a little bit of progress there. Most of it not even the town's responsibility. But that Route 3 corridor, I think, looking at those surveys, again, the challenges, the visual appeal. I don't
Mhm.
think anybody has a problem with the visual appeal of driving out in Western Coventry. But I think there's a huge problem with the visual appeal of, downtown Tioga Avenue.
I have to agree with Julie, because I can't even envision a village center or a place in town where you would just want to stroll along a side.
Right.
Although I have been really an advocate for creating a visual appeal for the community, because you can just go through town and you wouldn't know where you are.
Mhm.
So the council did approve the use of ARPA funds to paint the Trestle Bridge. The Trestle Bridge is owned by the state, but we did approve to do the Trestle Bridge. And we also gave ARPA funds to DPW so that they could put up signs at the entrances, or I guess entrance points to Coventry. So like on Arnold Road or some of the other major roads, there would be a sign that says, "Welcome to Coventry." And then around that sign, there would be some kind of flowers. People don't have a sense of community. They don't know what they've entered. They don't know what they've left. All they see is a very commercialized Route 3. They see some commercialized 117, very dense population, and then it gets a little less traffic as you go west. But people don't have a sense of community. And I think that one of our visions, and I don't know how we would word it, but we want to create a sense of community so people feel that they belong to a place, and that this place is an attractive place to live and play and maybe even work. So those are some of the thoughts I have, but I don't think that people really see Coventry as as I said, a place.
Yeah, in the ECNO, and I think on the transportation one, it spoke a lot about the accidents on Route 3. I mean, I think that's a huge area, or Tioga Avenue, that needs to be part of the vision, you know. I mean, I think the grand vision is gorgeous sidewalks with those black village lampposts that have the hanging baskets from the, you know, there's a vision
Yep.
for you.
Yeah.
Right.
But, you know, and maybe then I take this personally because I live off of Tioga Avenue, and from the housing authority to my home is less than a mile. And I take my life in my hands every day. I try to go home.
Right.
Literally take, and there's nothing rural about it. But when you read the surveys and their comments, they're looking for the visual appeal. And I think they're talking about that Route 3 corridor.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I've also been promoting uniform signage too. I mean, uniform signage, whether it's at the library this way or the town hall that way. We need to create visual appeal, and there are a variety of ways that can be done.
Which can then help promote a town center, maybe,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, I just was gonna second the idea of the of signage. I mean, Tioga Ave is just, it's turning into, or maybe already has turned into a Route 2 Bald Hill Road again.
Sure has.
Hard zoning, everybody's putting up their own signs. There's no cohesiveness to it.
Right.
So if there's some way we could develop some cohesiveness so that all the businesses along there have to, you know, maintain the landscaping. So once you plant flowers, who's going to be responsible for maintaining that, mowing the lawns, keeping the sidewalks trimmed? I mean, I go down at Tioga Ave and there's weeds growing everywhere, all over the sidewalks. You can't even walk on them anymore. So that would be something to include in the vision, is to, I guess, make sure that once things are implemented, that there's a way to maintain these.
Maintain them, yeah.
Because otherwise people say, yeah, I'm gonna put in some flowers, and then the next thing you know, they're dead and hanging over the side, and just,
Exactly. I understand that.
but yeah.
One of the things, and I'm glad Herb is on here, we need to consider what kinds of zoning regulations we need in order to promote this vision. Because one of the worst decisions I ever made was to look at this proposal to put in some big garages. It's next to Midstate Gun, and there is like 3 bays there, and there are big garages. And I just envisioned that, you know, a truck would move into the garage and leave. But what I'm seeing along Route 3, Tioga Avenue, which we say could be a nice place for people to stroll or what have you, we see all kinds of trucks outside on the street. There is no landscaping there or whatever. So it's looking almost like a junkyard. And so we have to think about what kinds of zoning we want in order to have some kind of consistency in the vision that we provide to people, And I don't see consistency in the vision that we're providing when you go down Tioga Avenue and then you go by Mid-State, and then all of a sudden you see all these trucks outside these large bays. And that's just one example. I can't even envision a place where we would stroll except the center of New England. And when I think about it, Garden City is a place that one would stroll because you've got landscaping, you've got sidewalks, you've got nice lighting, etc. Even center of New England is not a place that one would stroll. It doesn't have the right mix of stores, and it doesn't have a strolling atmosphere. And I'm hard pressed to think about where there would be a city center or even a strolling area.
And you mentioned Garden City. Where is that?
That's in Cranston,
Oh, okay.
on Route 2. South, it's north of the malls.
That was supposed to be what the center of New England was supposed to be.
Really?
When Cambio's plans first came out, and I think those were back in '99, that's what center of New England was supposed to be. Garden City too.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right, just to summarize a couple of ideas I've heard so far. So a vision for a village center. We see Coventry as a town with a village center with some sort of cohesive visual appeal. We're generally talking about the Route 3 corridor, and where we can stroll, where we have some sort of connectedness with signage. We feel safe walking, and then there's some more details here, which are the weeds I don't want to get into, but just sort of repeating what I've heard. Also, the
Emily,
various parts of, yeah.
Before you leave that one, it's a big pet peeve of mine, but strolling area sounds like summertime, flowers, etc. But it's really strolling area 4 seasons.
Mhm.
So you
Not
can't
in
stroll in
Frozen.
Coventry on existing sidewalks 4 seasons because they're never cleared. So anything that happens that we do from a center perspective has to be maintained for 4 seasons, not just in the summertime.
Sure. Okay. So these are, and I'm just, again, sort of repeating back what I'm hearing and how I've synthesized them, and they're not mutually exclusive. The other one here is that various parts of town are well connected, that we have areas that are comfortable and safe to move through. And we talked about maintenance, and to your point, Tom, that these areas are properly stewarded all year round. So whether that is maintaining the flower beds or keeping the sidewalks clear, and also providing that all of these things are helping to provide a sense of community. So I think the point of this bullet was really to get at the connectivity and feeling that there's a sense of knowing where you're going and coming from as you're moving throughout the town. And then, Anne, I think I heard you say that the community in your vision is an attractive place not only to live but also to play and to work. And that's something, that's sort of a very apt and appropriate way to talk about what goes into a comprehensive plan, and because of it, you see that as the title to a lot of comprehensive plans, big cities and small communities alike. It's you could see on the title page, Coventry, live, play, work, or something like that. You see that a lot. So you really nailed that one, but I think our charge is to even blow that out
Right.
even more.
I mean, I'd like to throw out an idea, and that is the word green. What's our vision? And this is not a discussion for tonight, but what's our vision of having a community that is green, that we're thinking about the environment, that we're thinking about the sources of energy that we use, that we're thinking about potential places for solar arrays, but not on prime forested areas. I don't know how we would phrase this, but it's just something I think we need to be forward thinking, and even being green is not forward thinking anymore. It is what we're all striving to do. But we're not really putting into play some of the high-tech areas, some of the high-tech thoughts we should have, like internet service all over town, things like that.
Well, you bring up two important points. So I hear you on the energy front. I think that's important to incorporate somewhere in this vision. And then in terms of high tech and internet service, that to me sounds like economic development and services and facilities. But really, it's providing the services to make this town a place where one can live and work, if that means, for instance, living from home and having the working from home, or locating your business. You want to trust that you've got strong internet where you're going. So maybe can we brainstorm on the economic part of the vision for a minute?
I actually still had a few comments if I
Okay,
could.
sorry, I didn't see that, Sherry. My apologies.
No, that's okay. I was trying and I didn't want to be rude either.
You got it.
So basically, you guys are talking a lot about landscaping and things like that. And when we approve our developments, we're supposed to be approving landscaping plans. Is nobody following up to make sure that they're being done? I mean, there's a whole new plan that they had with in regards to that booklet that Herb had, basically saying, look, when we do new projects, when we do things, these are the guidelines we should go by. These are the, giving some pretty good guidelines. Are we not utilizing those? And I also believe that would take us back to that question item that you had, Emily, with regards to the revitalization of the area. I believe that's probably why that would have been started originally, and why it should be followed back up on, because obviously it was left by the wayside.
Sherry, remind me, I think I lost you somewhere in there when you're referring back to what I mentioned earlier, the question I asked earlier.
In regards to the in the table, I think it was like whether or not we had a revitalization plan for
oh, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I didn't want to quote what it says because off the top of my head I don't remember. So
no worries. Yeah, that was the 2000 action about a revitalization plan, right? And Herb referenced the plan that he had from 2007 about Sandy Bottom, but that was not quite as comprehensive as what we were saying.
So I mean,
the town might need.
I think my point with this is we can say whatever we want in this document, but the problem is we already have some of these things in place that are not being followed. So how are we going to make sure that going forward they're being followed so that we do get to ultimately where we want to get Route 3 revitalized and looking nicely, as opposed to what it looks like. So, it's all great that we're rehashing this, but I feel that it's already there. And we're just not utilizing it. It's not being put into play properly.
Yeah, that's fair. I hear you. And I think in so many ways, you're right from what I've seen. And it's not easy to do visioning because especially the folks like you all who take your time to volunteer on these committees and you are committed to your community to get things done. I understand the urge to jump ahead to action and to say, how are we going to make it work? So, which is why I'm keeping notes in the sidelines here, because we will get there. But the visioning part is important, because if we can't clearly express in a pretty simple way what we are hearing and what we are sort of bringing together as the overarching theme of what this plan is doing, then the community is never going to understand all those individual actions that come out of it. So yeah, your points are all valid, Sherry. Lynn, I see now that your hand is up, and now I can see everyone. I just expanded my view here, so.
Yeah, thanks. So with regards to economic development, I just want to, I think, re-emphasize in whatever vision there is that we reuse existing buildings to the fullest extent possible. There's so many vacant properties now that I see, especially on Route 3, that are just sitting there unused. sort of basically to reuse existing buildings to the fullest extent possible. When new buildings are required for whatever reason or needed for a particular business, that they use best management practices in their development, such as using solar, parking lots that don't have a lot of runoff. You know, there's all sorts of techniques out there that can be implemented to reduce impact. So I'd like our vision statement. I mean, I would propose that the vision statement includes something about, you know, those types of best management practices. And, you know, I mean, obviously to balance our open space with our economic development, we still need to get businesses in here, but there should be a vision statement to reflect something about the kind of businesses we want. You know, I don't think we need any more Dunkin' Donuts. We don't need any more auto parts stores. We don't need any more McDonald's.
Family Dollar.
You know, we don't need any more dollar stores. We need to try and find a way to attract businesses that are, I don't know, not necessarily, I guess, high tech, but low impact, if there's a way to do that. You know, so businesses that believe in sustainability and those kinds of businesses, I don't really have an idea of, you know, what they might be, but yeah, we got to get away from this fast food, quick and easy in and out kind of mentality that is so prevalent along Route 2.
I agree with you, Lynn, because if we don't think about the kind of business, we'll end up with businesses that just require low-paying service workers. And that's not going to promote a community in which people are going to want to work.
So should we add something in there about job creation? Is that what I hear? And when you're saying, you know,
I'm
businesses.
not so much talking about job creation as I'm talking about, we need to think about the kind of businesses, and Lynn gave me this idea, the kind of businesses that we want. Because if we're just rejoicing over another Family Dollar, we're not rejoicing over adding professionals who will want to stay in town and work and who can afford those $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 homes. They're going to be the people who are making just enough money to survive with maybe a very small family. So there's a lot of decisions to be made here about when we say bring in business. Well, what kind of business do we want? What kind of people do we want here?
Well, I actually, another thing that I heard out of what you just said, Anne, was about the cost of housing, and that jobs that are lower paying might bring, or when you have folks working in town and not making enough money to afford a $500,000 house, how do we provide for those people to also be Coventry residents and you know, providing for all workers in all economic income levels?
I have a question for Julie. Julie, do you know what percentage of people in our town are actually renters versus homeowners?
Yeah, I think that's in the report you sent us, the ECNO on
The housing, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's see, I can pull it up.
owner occupied is higher. But when you talk about, you know, I'm a monitoring agent for the state of Rhode Island, and many communities approve developments, and then, you know, single family homes, and then they require the development to have so many affordable units in it. But then they say, oh, but it's home ownership, so you can go up to 120% AMI. And I refuse to monitor those, because 120% AMI is someone making $150,000, $200,000. And in my world, the people I serve, I have a lot of families who have been working towards economic self-sufficiency for 5 years. They're actually in a contract with us. And, you know, they could be at the end of this 5-year period making $85,000. I mean, these people receive the education and or training they needed, and you know, they're out working and it's a, you know, 3-family household, 2 people working. They can't afford anything at 85,000, you know, but
Mm.
if the development, if in the planning and approval of the development and you set units at an affordable rate, you keep the AMI at 80%. And, you know, now there are people who have been grown up here and they want to stay living here, but they can't afford the $500,000 house, but they could afford the $200,000 house if there was one available. And especially with all of the new homes going in, because they can afford the $200,000 one, as long as they don't have to put 80 grand into it to rehab it, you
Mhm.
know? So somewhere that has to be, you know, in our housing element of who do we want to serve, you know?
Well, and I mean, I think there's an argument that the comprehensive plan to do its job well is thinking about how to serve all of those people.
Correct, correct.
So just staying with that for a moment, you know, what is that in a vision? Is it Coventry is a place where families and individuals at all income levels can find,
Live, work, play.
yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
you know? Yeah, and you have to remember, and it's, if you want to call it sad, go ahead, it's Rhode Island. If you grew up in Coventry, you kind of want to stay in Coventry. You don't go too far. Just, you know, you don't want to go move to Providence. Many do. You know, I'm using that as a generality, but we are still Rhode Islanders. And that's the families that are, you know, coming to my door. That's who I'm seeing, born and raised here in Coventry, and they want to stay, and I can't help you. But there's a new development going in, but nope, it's going up to 120% AMI. I can't understand that.
Is that a state policy that the
The
town
state
cannot?
allows it to be called affordable for home ownership up to 120% AMI. And I've been called in all around the state to be the monitoring agent. I have to just, you know, certify the eligibility, and I refuse if it's at 120%. That's not affordable for me.
Right.
Because
And
yeah,
towns can't override that with a local?
they can, they
Okay.
can. Yeah,
Okay.
they can, and they're not. And we have to, I'm assuming this, you know, again,
Yeah,
just a lack in the continuity of the town administration, and that's not against anybody that's, you know, here today, even working here today. You know, we just can't get our foot off the ground with the housing. This is one element that's just been, you know, pushed under the rug because there's so many other issues that are pertinent.
Julie, I have a quick question. Do you
Yes.
find that they just don't know the fact that they can deny going up to that 120%, or are they choosing to do so?
That perhaps that is. I mean, Coventry has adopted an affordable housing production plan that has never been implemented. And one of the action items in that plan is, oh, planning department, if you get a development, you know, bring in the housing authority and let's see if we can work and get affordable units in there. Then I could bring that knowledge to that meeting, or, you know, I have never been invited in 15 years.
Okay.
But again, it's change and change and change and change in administration. So there's so many other priorities up here that, so the mechanisms are in place. They've just never been acted upon. And I don't know, I'm not sure where the affordable housing plan is going to fit into the comp plan. Isn't it supposed to be a subset of it, according to the state? Or-
it's part of the, I mean, we certainly looked at it,
Yep.
and it's probably discussed in that same housing chapter. I've looked at so many in the last week that I can't point to where it is.
Yep.
But actually, you know what, I've got it open, so let me just do a quick search.
So Julie, I just picked your brain about the housing stuff because I do a lot of it with Operation Stand On with our veterans. We work with a lot of the housing authorities. So I was just curious.
So yeah, we referenced the AHPP from 2005. and that's the most recent housing related planning document adopted by the town. It was adopted, and you're saying it just hasn't been implemented, hasn't been institutionalized in any way.
Right, yeah, it was revised and adopted 2004, revised in 2005. And I think that's the latest version, right, Julie?
That's what we found.
You're muted, Julie. Julie, you're muted.
There you go.
Yeah, so, and that had to be approved by the state. But I don't even know, as the director of the housing authority, what is the town's vision? I have no idea. No one has ever, we may have had a discussion or two, and that's where it ends.
Mhm.
So
Well,
I
and
can't, I can't help the town or not, not help the town, because I just don't get anything from the town. And again, this is not anything negative,
yeah,
this is
sure.
just the way it is. So where do we stand? But I think, a town is concerned about all of its citizens.
And there's clearly, just from what we saw from the survey, there's concern about affordability.
Right.
And there's concern about having spaces for current residents to stay in Coventry as they age.
Correct.
And so that right there is a big part of a housing vision. Providing for affordable housing for residents of all ages and for people to, you're not going to probably say to live, age, and die in Coventry, but
Correct.
you want people to be able to live in all parts of their lives and
Right.
and stay in the town where they want to
And
be.
it's a state mandate. We have to have it.
Mhm.
So,
Right. So how do we make that happen?
Correct.
So it's 7 o'clock. We have a lot of good ideas here. We did not touch on so much historical and cultural. We talked a little bit about the arts and maybe bringing in businesses that support that. But I just wanted to put that out there. If any of you have thoughts that you want to share with me or with Herb after the fact on those, again, this is a work in progress, and my team is going to be doing some brainstorming on our end as well, and we'll workshop with these thoughts that you guys have just given us, and prepare some draft ideas for your feedback. Again, so historical and cultural, and then services and utilities is another one we touched on, but there's a lot in there. And in terms of a vision for services and this utilities, this has a lot to do with town operations. So it's even maybe more challenging to think about in terms of a vision, but that would be another one I encourage you to share thoughts on if you have them. Tom, I see your hand raised.
Just one thing, maybe you could put a bullet in there on the bottom. We're not going to get to it tonight, and I need to think about it more, but I've been to a few of the town meetings recently where we talk about the votes, and it seems that Coventry is a collection of villages, and maybe some people think that's a good thing and some people think it's a bad thing. I mean, I think it's a really good thing, as long as we can show that the villages are all marching to the vision of the town. So I live close to Anthony, which is another little village, and I like it. It's got a village feel to it, even if most of it's around the Veterans Center, for example. But I like the idea of trying to maintain the village while enhancing the greater town. Make sure that people, they feel that they live in a village, but they don't feel like they necessarily live in the town of Coventry. And I hear that is sometimes it impacts the vote within the town. But you can be a part of a village, but also be part of a town. And maybe that village center is another village within the group of villages, all within the town. So I want to think about it more, but I wanted to bring it up because it is definitely part of the historical aspect.
I'm just thinking, putting some words to paper based on what you just said. But yeah, I think that's a great point. That's actually something early on, you could see it in our proposal for this project. I thought the villages were going to be a much larger part of the discussion, that maybe unique village history and character and how they all contribute to the greater character of the town. And I've been surprised that it hasn't come up as much. I do think there's a lot of opportunity there.
I think the village concept is related to the development of the mills. And the mills are not here anymore. So I'm not sure what is the cohesive factor that keeps people together in what they would call a village. And I've heard the Historical Society talk about promoting the village concept. But if I were to find a village, say Summit Village, and I know that that was in the plan, Summit Village, what would that look like if it were developed into a village? What's left of that place?
Right.
Well,
And
I think that it could be developed nicely over there, and you've got a nice piece of parcel of land over there. There's that beautiful church that's historic that just needs to be revived. Like, you could put in a nice little sitting area, a nice little park over there. There's enough land to do so. You know, there's a lot of things that could be done in that area. I mean, you kind of keep tossing that up there. I know it's not the best of them, but you know, there's a lot of potential there. There's quite a bit of potential. Just like over where the community center at Sandy Bottom Road, perfect area for your town center that you keep saying, oh, we should be over on Tyoke Avenue. Yeah, Sandy Bottom would be your best spot. It's a nice little area. It's going to be all redone. It's a good walking area. It leads you to both sides. It's a central location. You know, there are a lot of places that we have. Coventry is very diverse. You have people that want to be in a city life, that want to live in a city. You have people that want to be a little bit more rural, but still have the quality of the city. And then you want people that want to be really rural and not have anything to do with the city.
Sharon, I just mentioned the church is privately owned, and the two.
Oh, it is? I did not realize that.
Yeah, and the bell was the most important feature of that church, and it was taken out by the gentleman who bought it from the Coventry Historical Society. And that bell is now sitting on Route 117 in what was supposed to be a drive-through coffee shop. So the bell is gone. It's someplace else. It's owned by someone else. And the other thing I think was an organ, and that's gone too. So it's really a shell of itself. One could hardly call that historic. And I agree with you. It's a shame, but that's what
That
happened.
is a shame. Yeah, that is a shame. I was not aware of that answer. So I stand corrected. Thank you for that.
I just wanted to mention to you, that's why I said, what's left of this village?
Yeah, no. I didn't realize they had done that to the church. I honestly didn't. I thought that it was going to remain preserved. I did not realize.
No, it was sold by the Historical Society for $30,000. And then it was resold for $100,000.
Wow. Just to
That is-
clarify, my point about the villages, and I think what I saw as unique there is it's really a land use thing. It's the way those spaces were developed, where roads are relative to the houses and just the density, really, the density of development from that era. It's unique, and it's not how other parts of the town were developed. It was an organic thing that's part of the town's history, and you see that a lot in New England towns. And it's sometimes if it's the right thing for that community, there can be some great opportunities there, and that can look like a lot of different things. But it's not something, certainly I'm not going to push it. Just wanted to clarify sort of what I meant by that. So I've already kept you over. We covered a lot tonight. I really appreciate everyone's participation. I encourage you to continue thinking about these vision statements and send me any thoughts that you have. I will continue to incorporate them and work them into what we're developing for you all. And before you see anything more on this front from me, you'll see more chapters to review. But trust that we're working on it all in the background. Any questions, final thoughts? Okay, great. I appreciate your time, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.